Hello, in this video I'm going to do a very quick impressions kind of test drive review here in the UK of the Kia e-Niro. So this is the 64 kilowatt hour sort of 250-300 mile range EV in this kind of compact SUV format, crossover format that seems to be very popular now. It's quite different from my IONIQ electric, which is a 28 kilowatt hour battery. And more than double the range, but it's a kind of different body shell and so on. But I kind of unexpectedly got the chance to drive this Kia e-Niro. It's very difficult to get hold of one at a dealer to test drive, or I haven't seen any of them on the roads anywhere. They're only very recently arrived in the UK. According to the team at the Milton Keynes Electric Car Experience Centre, where I got to test drive this one, there's only one model choice in the UK at the moment. I don't know if that will change. But anyway, let's talk about what it's like to sort of drive it and its kind of exterior and interior features in this video, and a bit of comparison to my current IONIQ, which is, the kind of efficiency king of electric cars. So yeah, let's talk about that in this video. Now, for a bit of context, I'm away from my usual recording setting here. I'm recording at a friend's out on the road and wasn't expecting really to have this opportunity to test drive the Kia e-Niro. As I say, they're very few and far between, and I haven't had the time recently with a move planned to kind of seek one out. So it was great. It happened to be in Milton Keynes, so I saw the Kia e-Niro in the parking area. I thought initially that it was going to be the plug-in hybrid. So rare are these kind of, the full electric ones. But it turns out the Experience Centre in Milton Keynes has managed to get hold of one. Great that they've got one, and I think they're going to be doing longer-term test drives on them at some point in the future. You can keep an eye on their Twitter for that. So I got to go in it. The footage from the driving is not up to my usual kind of footage on the channel, just because it was a very quick thing with the phone. But it gave me enough of a chance to form some impressions about the car. And I must say, as an initial thought, is this the first kind of fully quirk-free electric car? It's a pretty standard / popular body shell, and it does just about everything right. There's nothing weird about it, apart from the kind of weird dial gear selector. Other than that, you can't really fault it. You're unlikely to spot that it's an electric car driving around or notice it. It's got practically a petrol car range to it. 5 seats, lots of leg room, spacious, fairly well specified. So great. So let's get to it anyway. Let's start with the exterior. So I don't particularly like the exterior of the car. I quite like my IONIQ, but I'm not sold on it being a very attractive car. I don't think that's that relevant really for cars. Me personally, I still admire very good looking cars, but that's a separate matter. For electric cars, I'm sort of willing to accept sort of good aerodynamics, function over form. With this, all of these electric cars seem to have been going with this kind of crinkly grille type effect at the moment. I'm not sure how easy that is to clean, and people seem to be centering on having the charging at the front of the car. There are some issues around that. If you get a kind of minor front prang, a minor accident in the front, that you're going to be putting your charging port possibly out of commission. On my IONIQ electric, because the charging port is at the kind of rear left, I find that to be a nuisance more often than you'd think, actually, because even in Milton Keynes with lots of chargers and this big charging hub that we visited, which I'll say more about in a separate video, I had to kind of park across the white lines because I literally couldn't stretch the charging cables into the car. So there are pros and cons of all these kind of locations, but there seems to be a kind of standard now on the Hyundai Kona electric, the Kia Soul EV coming with the bigger battery, this Kia e-Niro, other than kind of the Teslas and the IONIQ and maybe the BMW i3. I'm not sure how many actually now are doing it off the front of the car. But anyway, so yeah, exterior wise, it looks okay. It's fine. Nothing offensive about it. Plenty of space. But I did look in the boot, and now I realize that it's deeper than the boot in my IONIQ. It's a kind of different shape because of the kind of lift back in my IONIQ. But I am capable of getting 2 90-litre suitcases side by side in my IONIQ. Then you're limited by the height. I was quite surprised how sort of shallow the boot was in terms of the kind of depth from the bumper. I was expecting, after what I'd seen online with people saying things, that it would be a lot deeper than that. I assume you still can get a lot of stuff in there, and I've seen on Bjorn Nealon's videos and others, you can fill it up. But still, that surprised me. That's nothing bad about that. It just surprised me because I was expecting to see a deeper boot. I also tried to film on the exterior, the underside of the car, to see if it's got the protruding battery pack like the Hyundai Kona electric. There's a 64 kilowatt hour battery pack in a car that's sort of been designed to be a petrol car or has other sort of petrol variants. That's quite a lot of batteries to stick in the kind of petrol diesel sort of shell. And indeed, it's not very good footage, my apologies, but yeah, you can see that it does protrude down from the car, but then the car rides very high. So I can't see that being a particular, challenge or problem. It should be fine. For the interior, again, the kind of, sort of generally quirk-free, very competent, very sort of usable, functional design came in. There were a few things that stood out to me. Firstly, the cup holders, the 4 cup holder bit in the middle, because of where the gear lever is, it's not buttons like on my IONIQ that are taking up part of the center tunnel by the driver's side. It's protruding forward, and there's not this kind of, floating design like you have in the Kona for that area. The cup holders are just, it's colossal. I've never seen that amount of space for cup holders in any car ever, anywhere. If you like having a lot of drinks, the Kia e-Niro is the car for you, I guess. But, so nothing wrong with it. Again, it was enormous. And then there's a kind of separate sort of cubby storage area behind that you open up under the armrest. That's almost identical to the one in my IONIQ, and there's a USB charging cable in there. Then there is sort of wireless phone charging and some sort of flip open USB sockets in the front. Fairly high spec as far as I could tell. The sat-nav screen, the GPS screen, looked smaller than my IONIQ. I'm not sure if that's just that the car was a different shape, just an impression that I got that it was either lower resolution or slightly smaller than the one in my IONIQ. The dials behind the steering wheel, the instrument cluster, again looked fine, very easy to read, very easy to see. My sort of impression, a lot of the switchgear looked either very similar in design or location to my IONIQ, because Hyundai and Kia are kind of sister companies. I did get the feeling on the steering wheel that it was slightly lower grade. That's not prejudice. I don't really care about the grade of all these kind of plastics and so on. It was just my feeling. I got the feeling like the cruise control selection button and so on was a little bit kind of, not quite as nice a feel as the one in my IONIQ. That's extremely subjective and extremely minor, so it shouldn't put you off the car if you're interested and you can get one and you can afford it. In the back, loads of leg room, loads of space generally, big feeling, of open space. So yeah, the interior I was quite happy with. It's a kind of obviously subdued colours, just like my IONIQ. I don't know why that's the case, whether they just sell better, people don't want different kinds of interiors with a bit more flair, whatever, it's fine. And again, if you don't know it's an electric car, you wouldn't sit in it and think, oh, this is something quirky, unusual, or something to be concerned about. It's very, very kind of, very sort of middle of the road, but in a positive way. Then finally, to driving the Kia e-Niro, I think this is the most impressive part of it, really. So firstly, the acceleration is really good. I don't know the official numbers, I will look them up at some point, but it went when you put your foot down, and even kept going at higher speeds. So from the pickup from 50, the pickup from 60 miles an hour, very, very good, very impressive, and, throws you back in your seat. I recently drove the Tesla Model 3 Performance in Denmark, and that, of course, from 0 has got kicked like a mule, not quite like the Tesla Model S Performance ones, but still very, very, very powerful. This Kia e-Niro was enough to put a broad smile on your face and enough to get out of any kind of, overtaking maneuver or any trouble where your right foot is more useful than your braking pedal. So that was very good. Driving it, I did notice that there was more kind of fiddliness around the regen paddles. So the Kia e-Niro has regen paddles like my IONIQ, where you can adjust from level 3 maximum regen up to a kind of coasting. I didn't find it as easy to flick them up and down to test, how good the coasting was and so on at level 0 or off, because it seemed to be set by the driving mode. So I think it might have been on auto function, and sadly, because it was all a bit last minute and unexpected, I didn't learn how to override that. So you can adjust the regen settings that are default by each driving mode, and I think there's Eco, Eco Plus, Normal or Comfort and Sport, so sort of 4 driving modes in the car. But I didn't find it that easy to adjust the regen on the fly. It didn't seem to be responding to me pressing the paddles. I think I did something wrong and it was on some sort of auto adaptive regen or something like there is in the new Kona Electric. It didn't affect my driving enjoyment, it just affected me being able to kind of test out fully how does it compare to driving my IONIQ. In terms of handling and just driving fun and driving responsiveness and agility and so on, I thought it was great for the kind of size of the car, for the height of the car. Yeah, I was really impressed. It handled very nimbly. It didn't feel like a particularly big car. It might be bigger than my IONIQ, but it didn't feel that way. Certainly taller than my IONIQ by a lot, but it had no body roll that I could discern or nothing that was concerning. I guess it's all that weight low down in the battery pack helps with that, and some, suspension design. The steering felt fairly taut and responsive, and I really enjoyed it. I mean, you can really sort of chuck that car about and get around very quickly. So when I drove the car, it was a fairly hot day, so we had the air conditioning on, and it was showing 245 miles indicated range with the aircon on, or 250 miles with it off. And I presume was also it being the kind of demo car. It's not having the kind of typical driving or even hypermiling driving patterns there. So, people's claims online about it getting up in close to 300 miles and so on, if driven carefully or so on, I could imagine that being the case. That seems to be quite realistic for it. The aerodynamics aren't going to be as good as my IONIQ, that's just inevitable from the design. But still, it was a quiet drive inside. There weren't any kind of annoying whistles or any other issues.
Because you get up to 70 so quickly and you don't want...
Yeah.
Well, now...
Lose your license.
Yeah, it's kind of just like, that's 70, that was quicker than expected.
To sum up my final impressions, really a kind of quirk-free EV, one of the first perhaps I've seen where you haven't got to kind of explain away certain weird features about the design externally or internally, or about how it drives, or that it has a limited range because it's close to petrol car range and so on. So I guess the only drawbacks are the price. It is in the kind of mid-30s, and there's only one variant available for now, and it might not quite have the spec that you want compared to the variants that are available elsewhere in the world, headlights and things. And availability. I really don't know. It's a big question mark over Hyundai and Kia electric cars. They're great cars, some of the best you can get. But availability, you know, is just very poor, so there's probably very long waiting lists. In terms of would we look for a car like that in Denmark after our move coming up? I think absolutely, actually. It's a perfect kind of family car. Again, quirk-free, usable, easy to handle, easy to drive, you know, very good on all fronts. Again, it would be the availability thing and the price. How far is the price off a Tesla Model 3, for instance? But all in all, very happy to have had the test drive. My thanks to the team at the Milton Keynes Experience Centre. Nothing like it in the UK or even apparently Europe, where you can just go in and get this kind of hassle-free, you know, sales-free environment where you can just ask about EVs, you can take them for a drive, you can even, you know, rent them for a short period. And we met someone actually at the charging hub who'd done that, and it helped them make a decision about their electric car purchase. They'd taken it on a real-world kind of trip. Another thing to mention, I guess, about the Kia e-Niro that being in Milton Keynes had made me realise is that, you know, it's got the kind of CCS charging port. And we noticed there's 4 IONITY chargers, which are these up to, I think, 350 kilowatt chargers going in, CCS plug only. It's got that, so it's future-proof from that point of view. And there's, you know, lots of other kind of CCS chargers going in Europe and in UK. So yeah, you're getting a fairly good future-proofed, quirk-free electric car, if you can get one. And if you can afford it, if it's in your price range. So overall, yeah, very nice to have had the test drive. And yeah, I'll do a separate video about the kind of this trip that I'm on, this journey, and the charging infrastructure, and reviewing my car a little bit. So look out for that when it's coming. So yeah, thanks for watching. Please subscribe if you'd like to see more videos from me, and bye for now.